Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back to Horror Analysis with me, Drew. Today we're going to begin Section B in our class, in our course, the horror tale. And when we start the horror tale, we're going to go back to our friend Noel Carroll in Philosophy of Horror, into his third chapter, where he talks about the plots of horror. He does talk about other things as well, like, he talks about lots of stuff, but what I'm going to talk about today is, of course, the horror tale. For the next 4 days, it's going to take me. 4 videos. This one's going to be fairly long, but the first of the horror tale plotting horror, which is his third chapter. This page 97 is where we're starting. He's going to talk about the plots of horror, funnily enough. He sees 2.5 horror plots. He talks about 3 of them, but one of them is only a horror plot a third of the time, if that. According to Carroll, I'm much more generous in my definitions of horror, so I just talk about it as its own thing. But Noel Carroll, of course, needs the supernatural element. So for him, the third one is only going to be a horror plot a third of the time, and it's only going to be a certain amount of a different kind of horror plot. For Carroll, his 3 plots are the complex discovery plot, which will be quite a bit of the horror pantheon. Almost all, I would say, fall into complex discovery plot or its variations. The overreacher, which is the next type, and then the fantastic, which is sort of off in its own little world, sort of a quasi-horror plot. Some horror plots have elements of the fantastic in them. And we're not talking, hey, fantastic. I'm going to try to avoid using those jokes. The fantastic's fantastic, hey. But knowing me, I'm going to fail and be awful and use those jokes. I have my hot water. It is very hot, but it helps my voice, so I'm going to go with it. Yes, so, complex discovery plot. We're on page 99 in here. These are not, when I'm talking about these plots, we're not talking about what you saw in high school, this mountaintop thing, where the exposition begins and then the rising action, then the climax, then the falling action and the resolution, or the denouement. They didn't use the word denouement. I always liked that word. I hated that chart, both when I was in high school myself and when I was teaching high school. It's such a bad chart. I guess for visual learners it helps, but most stories, they're very, range of mountains more than mountains at all, or cliff faces, sheer drops. They look like those bar charts of the economy. They're crazy. They're jagged. They're not this neat thing. Especially horror plots. There's so many backtracks and go forwards and odd things that this plot doesn't work. You could fit this plot onto, or fit the complex discovery plot onto this sort of chart. It's just not the it doesn't fit the same way. it's a different species entirely. So when I'm talking about complex discovery plot or the Overreacher plot, I'm not talking about that thing. There'll be some of that elements in there, more jagged, the up downs, and then final down at the end, sort of pre-sequel. But we'll, yeah, that's different. We'll get to that later. But complex discovery plot is its own thing. Here's the layout for most horror plots are in this layout too. Complex discovery plot layout. There's the onset, the discovery, the confirmation, and the confrontation. These are the 4 elements of a complex discovery plot. The onset is when the monster's presence is established for the audience. Discovery is when the character becomes aware of the monster. Confirmation is when the characters seek to confirm the monster, to get backup, convince others, something along those lines. Sometimes just prepare for battle. It's used to build suspense, which I'll talk about, of course, more. And the confrontation, where the character meets the monsters and wins or loses, depending on. The main, most material point in the complex discovery plot is the confirmation. There are lots of plots out there that just dispense with the confirmation point entirely and go straight from discovery to confrontation. Those would be simply called discovery plots. If you have the confirmation, it makes it a complex discovery plot. I'm going to go through each of these individually. Onset, where the monster's presence is established for the audience. Both Carroll and I cannot come up with a better example than Jaws. I think it is one of his examples. I haven't read over it today. I just watched. I'm redoing this video with my new headpiece. Yeah, but he does use Jaws. The opening scene of Jaws, I'm sure most of you remember, is the girl running down the beach with the drunk guy chasing after her. And they say, "Let's go swimming, it's dark." The night swimming scene. The girl starts taking her clothes off. Hey, hey. And most people who know horror know what that means. It means death's on its way. And she's topless. They don't show her getting bottomless, but in the water, she's bottomless. And she goes out into the water. Bad move, Chrissy. So Chrissy goes out into the water, and she's swimming, having a great time for a while. And then something happens. The music starts, actually. The music turns from the serene little violins until the Jaws violins. And everyone knows the Jaws violins. Her head dunks under the water. She comes up, and she's very concerned. Her head dunks under again, more violently. And she's not having a good time. Then she gets dragged off, and she's screaming, and that's basically the end of Chrissy. Does this establish the monster for the audience? Yes, that's the point of onset. The discovery, none of the characters become aware of the monster at this point. The characters don't become aware of the monster until later. The second attack, or the third attack, depending on the movie or story. And of course, sometimes, well, I'll talk about variations later. That's going to be its own video. The point that's usually being made in these is there's lots of iterations and variations. You can go onset and then discovery, then more onset, then confirmation, then more onset, then more discovery, then confrontation, then back to discovery. It can flip around lots. And you can take out certain aspects. You could have a plot where there is no onset at all. You can have a plot, as I mentioned before, where there's no confirmation. You can have a plot with only one of these elements, or only two of these elements, or all four, or three, or whatever. So there are, plenty of variations of this, almost infinite number of variations of this, and we'll be talking about the different variations next time. But when there is all four, there can still be iterations, I suppose is a proper term, and going back and forth. There can be 3 onsets in a row. One could imagine a Jaws story where Chrissy dies first in the night swimming, and then another person dies 2 weeks later, and still nobody in the town, the sheriff and the other people, don't know that there's Jaws is out there. And there could be 4 or 5 scenes where the audience finds out that Jaws is killing people before the sheriff finds out, being the main character. There isn't in the Jaws. You want to keep things going pretty quickly. You don't want to drag things down, but you can certainly have, in novels possibly you could have 4 or 5 onsets before. Before the discovery is made by the main characters. Discovery is when the characters become aware of the monster. I just had my own example for this. So if you just do your standard zombie movie, you see, you see Patient Zero, which is always the name for the first zombie in modern zombie lore. There's always the Patient Zero. Something happens, he becomes a zombie. You can see his first attack, which is usually how things are done, or his 5th attack or whatever. So that's an onset just for the benefit of the audience, knowing, hey, this is a zombie movie. The zombie attacks another zombie, eats somebody, whatever, and there's more, becoming more and more zombies. Then you have, Then you have the main character, or characters, discovering the zombies. So the main character is walking down the road and he sees a woman eating the brains out of a person on the road. A still kicking person, but not kicking for long, because there's let's say a middle-aged lady eating the other person's brains, the victim's brains. The character, of course, is kind of freaked out. The woman, the zombie, that we know is a zombie because we saw the onset, looks up at the character. The character is backing off. Character goes down a side road, and he sees a shuffling mass of zombies walking towards him. It's like, uh-oh. So this is him discovering zombies. He discovers zombies when he sees the woman. He rediscovers zombies when he goes down the road, and you can see him running out of that alley, going down the other way, and then seeing more evidence of zombies. So he's discovered zombies 3 times already. And you can, just quite as easily go back and do a more onset scene. You could have, meanwhile in Dallas, and then there's a horde of people in Dallas being eaten by zombies or something. The police gradually running out of bullets and not stopping the horde that's coming to eat them. maybe on a TV screen that flashes up while the character runs by it. That's actually good. I like that. So that's onset, discovery, onset, and then you can have the character rediscover zombies yet again in his own home. Finds out that his roommate is a zombie, or his mom's a zombie, or his little sister's a zombie, whatever. That's how it goes. There's iterations, and that's basically the basis of an example of discover, when the main character, the character you identify with, Shaun from Shaun of the Dead, when he discovers that there's zombies. Character you identify with discovers there's zombies. So the character become aware that there's a monster or monster. Information is when the characters seek to confirm the monster, get back up,
convince others, etc. The example I had for this was, sort of alien taking over thing. Through, you see an onset, just say an alien kills somebody. That's the audience knowing that aliens are coming down and attacking people. Then who should the character be in this? The hillbilly? The hillbilly sees the next attack. He's drinking beer in his pickup truck, and his buddies go out to, use the John in the woods, and he comes back and he's attacked by an alien, and he gets his head knocked off, and the redneck is scared, and he's like, oh crap. He gets in his pickup truck, he drives off. Now, he's the character, and we identify with him because, we do, for whatever movie reasons we do. And the redneck goes to the police. He goes, Sheriff, I just saw an alien punch Billy Ray's head off or whatever. And the sheriff goes, You're drunk, Bobby Ray. Get in the cell. You're not going anywhere. Aliens, you're crazy. Now, Bobby Ray, or whatever I said a minute ago, is trying to confirm, he's trying to get backup. Now, he meets up with the professor, who independently he's the other character, he saw, let's make it a she. Let's make it a nice love story between professor and redneck. She saw another alien attack, and she told her superiors at the college, but they didn't believe her, and she's been relieved of her duties. So she goes to the redneck bar, and she's like, oh man, what am I going to do? Aliens are attacking and no one believes me. And Billy Ray, or Bobby Ray, or whatever it was, sitting right next to her, I just got arrested for saying that aliens were attacking. And they's like, all right, well, let's not talk to the police, or the college people. Let's call up the governor, or the state police. And the governor doesn't listen to him, hangs up. They call the FBI. The FBI doesn't listen to him, hangs up. Meanwhile, you get more onset scenes of aliens are attacking other people. This little town is wiped out, and the only people that know about it are the professor and Bobby Ray, the redneck, hillbilly. You're following. So Bobby Ray and the professor are trying to get backup. They're trying to prove to people, confirm the monster, convince others, get backup, get photographic evidence of Bigfoot, if you're doing that. If this is a Bigfoot story, which it could be. These things are all interchangeable. Zombies. Jaws. It's not quite the same thing, but because it's different. They had a confirmation phase in Jaws too. And then confrontation. if they get backup or they don't get backup, so eventually the aliens attack enough cities that the army, said the president, when Billy, Bobby Ray, and Professor finally call the president, say, we lost half of Oklahoma or whatever to aliens. Are you going to help us now? And the president says, yes, we'll help you. I believe you, because the president usually does for some reason in these movies. And he sends the army. And Professor and Bobby Ray are in the front lines, and they share a kiss, and it's all happy ending. If they beat the aliens, zombies, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Right. And that would, of course, be confrontation, where the characters meet the monster. It doesn't matter if they get backup or they're able to convince others or not. One of Noel Carroll's examples is Van Helsing. Van Helsing is there as confirmation. He is there solely to say how unstoppable Dracula is. So we, as audience members, don't really get scared at the beginning of Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi is just Bela Lugosi. When Abraham Van Helsing starts talking about all the powers of Dracula, he's like, oh, he can do that? He can do this too? Oh my goodness, I'm starting to get scared now. Bela Lugosi is a lot more threatening. That's why confirmation is used to build suspense. That's its main device in the plot, in the complex discovery plot. It's in there to build suspense. At the same time that the characters are seeking to confirm or getting backup or convincing others, etc., the monster can be, the zombies can be growing the horde. The monster could be gaining in power. The wizard can be cementing his views and cementing his followers and learning more deadly spells or what have you. The evil ogre, whatever. Fill-in monster here can be getting more power, or he could be nearly unstoppable as it is, and the confirmation is just pointing out how unstoppable he is. And you still have to fight him because it's a confrontation. How unstoppable he is, that's Van Helsing's point. The point of Van Helsing talking about how he has the powers of Dracula is to make Dracula, in our minds, the audience, much more dangerous. For the complex discovery plot that Carroll goes over, he talks about The Exorcist. Blatty's Exorcist, obviously. This is a really beat-up book. Look at that. There's all these chunks missing out of it. Really weird. This is what Carroll felt was the best example of complex discovery plot. I have my own examples, which I'll get to. But we'll go over Carroll's first. The onset for The Exorcist is the main priest, fighting demons in Iraq, modern Iraq. That's the introduction portion. Is it prelude? What do they call it? They called it something funny. Prologue, Northern Iraq, yeah. The prologue is the priest dealing with disease. Because he doesn't like disease. And also, Reagan and her mother move into the house. There's stuff going on in the house. Reagan, pre-possession. up till the first scene of possession, there's, Regan complains of, starting to not feel well, hearing things in the attic. Her mom hears things in the attic. I can't remember the mom's name for some reason. Chris. Starts hearing things that she thinks are rats in the attic. Finds Regan's teddy bear in one of the rat traps. Regan says stuff is moving in her room. Stuff's going on. Also, you see evidence of the Black Mass that is happening in Washington. Up until the party scene, where Regan urinates on the floor and tells the astronaut he's going to die in space. That's when Chris thinks she's really sick. She's getting really sick. Chris, the main character, the one we identify with, along with the cop and the other priest, etc., but mostly Chris, doesn't discover that there's a demon that Regan is possessed until the masturbation with the crucifix scene, the head twisting around, which is the knowledge of the murder of Chris's friend. Chris knows that, hey, there's a monster here. The character becomes aware of a monster. Now, it's her daughter, so she knows that it's possessed. She must be possessed because it's her daughter. Her daughter's not a monster. Her daughter is possessed. So the priests come in. Now, this is the confirmation portion. There's the psychoanalyst priest who's coming in to obviously just make sure that Regan isn't crazy, or Chris is crazy, and starts, realizing, oh no, this little girl knows stuff that no little girl knows, no 12-year-old knows, no someone who hasn't been involved in black magic knows, dark stuff, and stuff about him, obviously. So, up until calling the other priest in, is the confirmation point. The building, proving that there is a possession. They confirm the monster through the psychoanalyst priest who says, no, she's not crazy, she's really possessed. Confrontation is, of course, the actual exorcism itself. The characters meet the monster. It's a confrontation. the fight for Regan's soul and body. And that is the complex discovery plot. That's Exorcist. So, we have plenty of complex discovery plots examples now. There's possession plots, Jaws, zombies, aliens, Bigfoot. Lots of them. It's a whole span. So much of horror fiction is complex discovery plot. Now, that was Carroll's example. I have two examples of my own. The first one I really like because when I wanted to teach this class as a class in a classroom, this was really helpful because if I was teaching it to high schoolers, I could show this movie because it's PG. It's not, and as it's PG, it's not particularly scary. But Monster House. Monster House is Steven Spielberg, Robert Zemeckis produced cartoon, meaning also that it's not very scary. It is a complex discovery plot. onset, it begins with the introduction of the house. And there's stuff going on weird with the house. It's not a normal house. The main characters already think it's not a normal house because of the guy who lives there is a cranky old man. And he thinks that he's just the characters think that the man is evil. But they don't know that the house is a monster, because it's a monster house, given the title. We realize that the house is a monster very quickly, because anything that seems to fall onto the lawn gets sucked in like quicksand. Quicksand lawn is a really great, anything solid that becomes quicksand is pretty awesome. It's been done once or twice, but it should be done. Hollywood, let's go for that more. Quicksand lawn, Steven Spielberg, Robert Zemeckis, you could do that in an actual scary movie as opposed to just in Monster House. It's available to you. Get on that, Hollywood. So the audience is aware that there's supernatural monsterness going on in the monster house, around the monster house. There's discovery by the main characters, the boys and the girl. What is it? DJ, Chowder, and Jenny. Jenny's going to try to sell Halloween candy to the people in the monster house, but there's no one's there because stuff happened. Not going into the plot too much. But it's an empty house, but it's a scary empty house. The characters know something's up. DJ and Chowder know something's up, so they try to stop Jenny. It doesn't work, but the house almost eats all three of them. So all three of them know there's a monster. That's discovery. Characters become aware of the monster. Confirmation consists of the girls trying to, the kids trying to convince the adults, not necessarily that there's a monster because they know they won't be believed, but knowing that there's something going on. Like, they tell the cops that there's an animal locked up in the house, so the cops could help. That doesn't help very much. They try to convince the babysitter. Doesn't work. They try to get backup from various sources and fail. So, leading up to confrontation. Trying to stop the house, or not destroy the house, but try to stop the house from being possessed. Possessed house or monster house. They go after the monster, and then eventually blow it up once the monster becomes mobile. Once the house becomes mobile. The other example I have that King doesn't call a complex discovery plot, but I think is, he calls it a multiple discovery plot without being complex. He doesn't think there's a confirmation to it. I think there is, because there's a lot of preparation for battle. And in that preparation for battle, just like Van Helsing, it's a lot of, man, this monster is invincible, or darn near invincible. And that is Stephen King's It. Both movie and book. Either way, it's a complex discovery plot. Maybe a little light on the confirmation, but essentially a complex discovery plot. Onset, it starts off right away with the Pennywise being in the sewer, and the brother of the main character. Do we have characters' names on here? Because I don't remember the characters' names. No, I don't. There's only Stephen King's portrait on the back. Nope, the kids. They just call them the kids over and over again. One of the kids' brother is eaten by it. The writer, the one who becomes the writer, is eaten by it. His brother is eaten by it. Gotcha. That's the onset. There's a little bit of onset for everybody. But the audience knows right away there's a monster in Derry. There's something really wrong with Derry. The confirmation scene where the building of tension happens is, man, there's so much wrong with Derry. Derry is the town. It's essentially a haunted town. The whole town is under the spell of this thing. So much so that they don't notice bad things happening to good people. No one does, except these 7 kids. Everybody turns a blind eye to bullying and whatnot. That's part of the confirmation. But I'm jumping ahead now. Why did I jump ahead? Discovery is when the kids each have an individual discovery of it, and they all narrowly escape it. Run-ins with Pennywise mostly. Pennywise is the dancing clown. Tim Curry being the dancing clown that he is. It's such a scary movie. Oh my goodness. Such a scary book too. Nothing on the... I mean... There's No, I guess he wasn't involved. Huh. Anyway. Yeah, it's so scary. It's a great soundtrack on this one, too. I don't know who did the soundtrack. I don't think it says who did the soundtrack. But that's one that really creeped me out. Soundtracks get to me. And of course, Jaws. If you think of the Jaws soundtrack while you're swimming, even if you're swimming in a pool, you're probably going to get out. Just happens. I can't do it. So anyway, Discovery. Each character discovers it in his own way, and then they form together. That's also part of the confirmation. Carroll, come on. He just barely mentions it briefly, and says it's a rediscovering. And there's a lot of rediscovering. There's a lot of iterations. In this book and movie. Even more, there's one of each. There's onset, discovery, confirmation, confrontation as kids. And then they grow up and there's re-onset, rediscovery, reconfirmation, and reconfrontation as adults. It is and there's discovery several times, and there's onset several times as other kids get eaten. And there's reconfirmation, and there's reconfrontation. There's about 5 confrontations each time. Well, no, that's exaggeration. There's 2 confrontations that I know of, I remember as kids, and there's one big one. No, there's 2 confrontations as adults, because one of the guys gets stabbed, sort of. Yeah. So, discovery. Each kid has its own discovery of it, of the monster that is in Derry. And they all band together, and they prepare for battle. They realize it's something, and as they're preparing for battle, which is confirmation, they're realizing that's wrong. They can't get back up. They realize they can't get back up because of the way the town is. They can't convince others for the same reason. They keep confirming that there's more and more powers of the monster. It's not just Pennywise the dancing clown. It's the powers that Pennywise the Dancing Clown exerts over the whole town. And then confrontation. They realize that silver dollars in a slingshot is a great way to dispense with this monster, and they confront it once, twice, then grow up. It happens again. They confront it once, twice again, and finish it off. And then other stuff happens even then. Yeah, so they realize the town is wrong. They go through the methods of fighting it and prepare for battle. And then they fight it. And then they grow up. And then what's his name? Do I have an... I don't think I do. It's the black guy. The black kid / black guy. The only one that stays in Derry, the librarian. When another child gets eaten 30 years later, several years later, when they grow up, he realizes it's back. It's back. He calls him up. They reassemble, except for one who dies, etc. You guys should know it. If you don't, read the book, watch the movie. Not necessarily in that order. I always recommend watching the movie first. That way you're not so disappointed when you read the book first and then watch the movie. This one I think would hold up either way. This is a really, really frightening movie. Slightly different than the book. A little bit happier ending. A little bit Hollywood. But good. That's that. Alright. So that's essentially complex discovery plot. Now, as I said, there's iterations. You can have onset, discovery, onset, confirmation, onset, more discovery, more onset. It can go on. You could mix and match them as much as you like. Now, there are variations as well. These are the complex discovery plot variations. There are 15 of them. Noel Carroll, for some reason, counts 14. And the one he excludes, for some reason, is the one with the 2 asterisks next to it, where confrontation is excluded. Pardon. Which is weird, because he discusses that type in here. I'm going to go over next time, because I'm already at 45 minutes here. I'm going to go over next time the different variations and examples of the variations, because I think there are some for each, or at least quasi some for each. Now, the one we talked about already is the full 4 things: the onset, discovery, confirmation, confrontation. The variations exclude 1, exclude 2, exclude exclude 3 of these. I'm going to try to say them all right now without getting tongue twisted. My apologies, because I probably screw up a couple of times. But there's onset, discovery, confrontation. Onset, discovery, confirmation. Onset, confirmation, confrontation. Discovery, confirmation, confrontation. Onset, discovery. Onset, confirmation. Onset, confrontation. Discovery, confirmation. Discovery, confrontation. Confirmation, confrontation. Pure onset, pure discovery, pure confirmation, and pure confrontation. I can't believe I did that without making any mistakes. Those will go into detail next time. Then we'll go over the overreacher plot, as well as mixing the overreacher and the complex discovery plot together, and then we'll go over the fantastic, as well as mixing all those all together. I suppose you could have a great stew of all. There's 4 points in the overreacher plot too, so you could have all 9 points mixed into one big, huge stew. I'm not going to go over that because that would be just a weird story in of itself, just an unwieldy story, I think, too. But it would prove the point that it could be done. So, this is the complex discovery plot. Onset, where the monster's presence is established for the audience. The discovery, where the monster's presence is established for where the characters become aware of the monster. Confirmation is when the characters seek to confirm the monster to get backup, to convince others, to prepare for battle, to go over the monster's potential weaknesses or lack thereof. This is the point where there's tension is built in the confirmation side. That's the big point of the confirmation, is to build tension. Because occasionally, when the characters are attempting to do these things, the monster is becoming more powerful or cementing his position, etc. And then there's the confrontation, where the characters have to meet this monster. Right. Next time, we'll go over the variations. This is all part of the horror tale. With me, Drew, on horror analysis. Folks, I'll see you next time. Have a great night.